Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, which is sponsored by Lumo. Today's conversation is all about how Lumo's technology can help you overcome the barriers of automation in your irrigation. That means cutting through the complexity, increasing reliability, and of course, lowering the cost of entry. That's also that you can reap the benefits of improved fruit quality and efficiencies of labor, water, and energy. To share their insights, we have with us Val King from Lumo, one of the industry's top experts in irrigation, as well as Ryan Decker from Clos, who has first-hand experience implementing Lumo's technology in his vineyards and is actually expanding his usage now. Before we get started, a quick technical note. This webinar is pre-recorded. However, both Ryan and Val are with us in the live chat. So if you have any questions along the way, just pop them into the live chat and they will answer them there as we go along. No need to hold your questions until the end. Now with that, let me hand it over to Val to get us started.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for that introduction. Again, this is Irrigation Simplified, and we're going to talk about how we do that with Lumo. We're going to be talking some actual examples from a vineyard. I'm Val King with Lumo. I'm the Director of Channel Development and a big fan of irrigation efficiency, and excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Ryan Decker. I'm the viticulturist over at Clos Winery. I've been here for the past 2 years, but I spent the first 15 years of my career over in Sonoma County, farming vineyards over there.
Thank you, Ryan. Our agenda today is we're going to talk why most growers are still irrigating manually, some of the essentials for what's needed to reliably automate. We're going to talk about the results that you should demand from that irrigation investment, and then we'd like to share some of the ways that Lumo delivers that in a very simplified way and makes it easy to reconcile irrigation for irrigation to be transparent and accountable. And then we're going to talk about some of the ways we've done that at Clos. And then at the end, we'll have plenty of time to answer any questions that the folks may have. So a big question, why aren't growers automating? There is a large percentage of acreage in the United States, North America, that still isn't automated. This is different than other places in the world where there is quite a bit of automation, and we'll get into some of the reasons why. So we've asked a lot of people, we've done a lot of surveys, and the consistent thing that comes up is that complexity, reliability, and support. Tractors break. We know that anything that's out in the vineyard, it's going to break. And when it does, if it has anything to do with water, that's a right now kind of problem. And we need to have reliability, and we need to have confidence in those systems before we can deploy those in a production farming environment. The problem with your traditional irrigation controllers is they're complicated. Many of us have the frustrations with our home irrigation sprinkler timer. Those are quite frustrating and hard to learn how to use. So if you imagine that scale to the complexity of ag irrigation, it becomes even more complex. A lot of these solutions, traditional automation solutions, are quite expensive. So that makes it hard to scale those and actually get it configured or usable the way we really need it. And then again, we have this reliability problem. The more wires that you have out there in the vineyard, the more things that are going to go wrong. And then, of course, many of these systems, although they can do some control, but they lack the visibility and the reconciliation of what actually happened with a given irrigation. And Ryan, you certainly some of these things, Ryan, you've seen a lot of this in your years. Could you give us some comments on that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think I have one of those controllers in the picture in a box in my vineyard down the street that hasn't been touched in a decade, probably. I would definitely agree with all of those sentiments. I've worked with a couple of different systems in the past, and there has either been a hardware reliability issue, or there has been a back-end usability functionality issue where it's just quite complex. You usually have to train a person in particular to manage the system. And then if that person happens to leave and move on to the next job, there's a real knowledge gap on how to operate that system. And then it ends up just becoming a brick in the vineyard, and you go back to irrigating manually because you know that that's going to be effective and it's going to get the job done. So really, I think having the hardware and the software side work together and be reliable is crucial for success in the irrigation business here.
Thank you. So if we consider automation and solutions, simplicity is by far the most important thing. It has to be empowering. It has to empower irrigators, ranch managers, viticulturists. Also, ultimately in that water value chain, you have compliance and those stakeholders as well. And that accountability to the various stakeholders is very important. And we think we have a compelling hardware software solution that does that. In the simplicity area, we eliminate a lot of wires. We eliminate the complexity of the traditional valve solenoids that are used for automation, and all that potential liability in terms of the wires that are out there. We eliminate all that and make a much more reliable system. So the solutions have to deliver. The proof has to be there. There has to be the ability to get results that you haven't gotten before. Specific to vineyards, right? A lot of times we're trying to execute deficit strategies, canopy strategies, and the ability that we have and the precision and the way we apply water, a lot of those strategies are dependent on that precision. And so the precision that we allow and the accountability in that allows new excellence in those executing those strategies. And Ryan, I would offer that you could comment quite a bit on that, especially around the area of deficit strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to reliably schedule my irrigations any time, 24 hours during the day, is a huge benefit. I mean, that's really what the crux of what we're trying to do here. But being able to have the data to back up those decisions that's automatically collected by a system. In Lumo's case, it's the flow meter that's built into every valve. To me, that is hugely valuable. And I've already corrected a couple of issues in my vineyards that I didn't really know existed without having that individual block flow data. And so just being able to dial in my irrigation system, not everybody has a VFD on their electronic pump that automatically hits a certain pressure. A lot of our pumps are just dialed into a particular speed, and we have to open the right amount of valves to get the right amount of pressure per block. And not having individual flow data at each block makes that really difficult. So I've been able to optimize my system just by having that data.
Excellent, excellent. The other thing is that as seasons go on, you have the ability to preserve institutional knowledge, grower IP on what worked last year. How can I make that repeatable? And then there's also the opportunity, if you start considering comparing different ranches, you now have a valuable data stream by which to make decisions about overall efficiency, upgrades to pumps, and the system and the like. Is that the case with you?
Yeah, definitely. One cool feature with Lumo is that we can take notes in the app as well. And so we can actually write down, okay, we opened these three blocks together. And if the flow was not where it should have been, then we know in the future, okay, we had these three open. Now we only should open two, or, that's just one example. And that's the information that the irrigator can have in his hand in the field. That's not going to live on some Excel spreadsheet buried in my computer. That's available now. And so we can make changes on the fly just having that information.
That's great. That's great. Accountable irrigation. We all know that irrigation is hard. Being precise with irrigation is hard, and the Lumo One valve makes that easy and reliable. It really does. So the foundation is this all-in-one design. We eliminate all the add-on gizmo box, the add-on wires, the solenoid. We put everything in one integrated flow meter, integrated control, integrated telemetry to the cloud. So just a really simple design, less maintenance, less things that can go wrong. The way the valve is designed, the connection on the valve is such that if the valve did need to be replaced, the whole unit could be swapped out in a matter of minutes. The operations center is the brains behind what we're doing here. We can track irrigations in quite a bit of detail. We can detect leaks and faults in down to the drip line level and a few emitters at a time. We can sense those kind of problems. And we bring that together in something we call flow vision. And flow vision is the ability to look at the flow of a given block, compare it to what it should be, and establish performance baselines around what actual flows are. Once we've established those baselines, we can use those as triggers for notifications to irrigators, managers, and viticulturists. The other thing is with those notifications and that visibility, irrigating at night, irrigating off peak, saving money on energy, a larger window with which to respond to heat extremes. It gives you a lot of power in that regard. So here's that flow vision in action, and I'll ask Ryan to give some of the details of these different blocks of his.
Yeah, you bet. And Val, I think I should probably just make it really clear how difficult it is to overstate how important it is to have a dashboard like this that controls your system. A lot of the systems are operated in the field somewhat manually, even though they are automated. But being able to pull up it on my computer or even on my phone and quickly look at what is scheduled or make a schedule change on the fly, look at the flow. I've got all of that in the palm of my hand, essentially. And so being able to look at all 125 acres that I have over here in Stag's Leap, just at the push of a button, basically, is huge. I can't really overstate how awesome that is. And just about anybody could pick this up and figure it out in a matter of minutes. It's really intuitive. And I think the Lumo has put a lot of effort into making this very intuitive because this is really what runs your system. And so, for instance, one of the pictures that's popping up there, that's the flow chart, the flow graph that you get for any irrigation that you execute. And that straight line at the top on the left there would be your theoretical flow. And so for each block that you have in the Lumo system, you put in the vine count and or basically emitter count and the flow rate of those emitters, and it'll tell you what your theoretical flow should be. And then once you perform your first irrigation, you can see how you're performing according to that baseline. And then after you do, I think it's 3 irrigations, the system will automatically change your flow rate, your base flow rate from your theoretical to what it actually is. And so, for instance, I think I'm putting for every hour that I irrigate my vineyard, because I have 2 half-gallon per hour emitters per vine, I think that 1 hour equals 1 gallon per vine. What I've found is that's not exactly true, and that's really not true in almost any vineyard that I have. It's different than that, and so as we get more and more into monitoring evapotranspiration in our vineyards, and we're getting pretty accurate data on vine water use, I want to ensure that I'm returning to the vineyard what has been used, or a fraction of that. And so if I don't even know how much is going out, it's hard to even rely on my evapotranspiration system if I can't deliver what it says I can. But now I can see exactly what I'm delivering through the flow rate. So it's such a powerful tool, and I just sit here and think, how have I lived this entire career without having this information? Just kind of fly by night, but it's made such a huge difference. One example that I'll give is I have a block here on my winery property that when it was installed, they snuck a 2-inch main line in there when we thought it was a 4-inch main line. And so we were opening like 3 blocks together on this 2-inch main line. And we were getting half the flow that we should have been getting. And we were like, well, what's going on? What's going on? But then we finally, once we had the valve installed, we can see, well, this is your problem. You just don't have the flow because you have too many valves open. And so now we've corrected that problem. The vineyard looks far better than it did in the past. And it was just a simple looking at the flow, and it was a very simple correction once we saw it. I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer. So it's corrected a couple of problems for me that I don't think I would have ever seen without it.
Yeah, very powerful. Thank you. So what was it that initially piqued your interest in Lumo?
The flow meter. That was the first thing that I saw that I was like, well, this is kind of a game changer to be able to have actual flow data at the block. A lot of people have flow meters on their pumps at the well house or on the inlet to your reservoir or what have you. So you get an initial flow of what's coming out of your pond or out of your well, but you don't know what's actually making it into your blocks. And so there's a lot of things that can happen in between the source and where it's being used. And then there's also a lot of issues that can happen in the vineyard that would show up on a flow data if you had it in the block. So, like a broken valve or, some leaks in there. And so being able to have that almost instantaneously makes solving problems a lot easier and makes saving water a lot easier because you catch leaks a lot sooner. And it just makes your system a lot more efficient. And so it was the plug and play of it, and it was the flow meter. And then since I was one of the earlier installs for Lumo, I actually was able to have a lot of input on their dashboard. And so you guys were really great about listening to our concerns as growers and what we felt was really important. And you included all of that into the dashboard. And so now using the dashboard, it's very user friendly. Like it just feels very familiar. Like when I use Outlook for email, it has a very similar, easy to understand flow. And so I can turn this over to anybody in my organization practically, and they can start and stop irrigations and look at the health very, very easily. So that's those are the two main issues to me is the usability of it, and then having that flow data. Those two things that we just haven't had before in our industry that are really changing the game for us.
That's good. Thank you. I like the simplicity reference to Outlook. So what was it about Lumo that made you want to expand this year?
Basically, all the things that I just said is just having that actual flow data to make decisions and make changes to my system or what valves are opening when. With my system, I have a pump that is quite a bit undersized for the amount of acreage that I have to cover. And so being able to schedule all my blocks in a row, whether it's night or day. Before, manual irrigations were not out throwing valves at night. And so it has now opened up an entire like 8 to 12 hour period where I wasn't irrigating before, where I can now irrigate confidently without having any issues. And if there is an issue, I can see it right away. And so I've been able to double the amount of ground that I can cover with my irrigations in the same amount of time, basically. And so, for instances, when there's a heat wave coming, like in 2022, we had, I think over here in Napa, we had 3 days over 110. I wasn't able to irrigate all of my vineyards leading up to that adequately because I couldn't irrigate for half the day practically. But with a system like Lumo, I can now put 3 hours of water, 4 hours of water on everything leading up to that heat spike. And probably save myself a decent amount of evaporation or desiccation in my fruit that I wasn't able to save without that ability. So being able to control that across my whole acreage was really the driving factor for that.
So in another way, your 12-hour day became a 24-hour day.
Exactly. It opened up half the calendar to put water on when I wasn't able to before. So.
Which I think leads to our next slide is you've done that. You've quantified the value you get from Lumo. Are you seeing benefits from able to irrigate off peak, some of the energy benefits yet, or is that yet to be seen?
That's yet to be seen. I don't think we've actually restructured our power agreement with PG&E. I think there's a different tier that you can move into. And so I haven't looked into that. But really the more important part is, being able to irrigate my vineyards in the amount that I want to at the frequency that I want to. And so parts of my vineyard are fairly shallow soils, and so my preference would be to irrigate those 2 or 3 times a week with shorter duration irrigations. And in other parts of the vineyard where I don't have that limited root zone, I can irrigate for a longer duration with less frequency. And I run my irrigator ragged with like 3 hours on this block and 6 hours on this one, and that's really hard to keep track of. And he's out there with his stopwatch and worrying about when he's turning it on and off at the right time. But now we just plug it into the dashboard and it just runs, and we don't have to worry about it. And so he can go worry about another ranch that he oversees where there is no auto irrigation, and just kind of let this one happen. And it's huge in so many ways.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. And so that concludes our time with you folks. I'd like to encourage you to, whatever questions you might have, if you can reach out. I'm available at val@lumo.ag. You can also visit us at lumo.ag. We'd love to hear about your irrigation challenges and see if we can help you. And again, thank you. Thank you to Win and Kim and the whole team there. And we look forward to doing it again.